The rain fell hard against the lonely gas station at the edge of town, hammering the pavement in relentless sheets. Neon lights flickered weakly above the pumps, struggling to stay alive in the storm. Ethan Cole pulled his rusty old pickup truck into the lot, the engine coughing like it wanted to die on him. He stepped out, tugging his jacket tighter around his broad shoulders, the kind of man who had lived too many lives in one lifetime. His hands were rough, his face tired, but his eyes, sharp, alert, and unbreakable, still carried the weight of responsibility. He wasn't here for himself. Every decision, every long shift, every sleepless night was for his little girl waiting at home. The gas meter clicked as the tank filled, and for a moment Ethan leaned against the truck, rubbing his forehead. Bills stacked higher than his paycheck, child support battles with distant relatives, and the crushing reality of raising a daughter alone had left him a man with no room for weakness. But weakness wasn't what he saw when he turned his head toward the dimly lit corner of the gas station. There, sitting on the cold, wet curb, drenched from the downpour, was a woman. Her clothes clung to her frame, her hair plastered to her face, her hands protectively wrapped around her stomach. She was crying, but not the kind of cry that begged for attention. No, it was a cry of someone who had lost everything, someone too broken to care who saw. Ethan froze, one hand still gripping the gas pump. Something about her cut through the storm and silence around him. People came and went under the awning of the convenience store, shielding themselves from the rain, but not one of them stopped to look her way. She was invisible to everyone but him. He dropped the pump back into place and slowly walked over. She didn't notice at first, her sobs lost in the roar of thunder. But when his shadow stretched across her, she flinched, her eyes snapping up to meet his. That was when Ethan saw it clearly, the curve of her belly beneath her soaked dress. She was pregnant. She tried to turn away, muttering something under her breath, but Ethan crouched down, his deep voice steady and calm. "You'll freeze out here. Take this." He slipped off his jacket and draped it over her trembling shoulders. She didn't want to accept it, shaking her head. "Leave me alone. You don't know what I've lost." Her voice cracked, a mixture of pain and stubborn pride. Ethan didn't push. He simply sat there with her in the rain for a moment, letting the silence speak. Finally, he stood and offered his hand. "At least come inside. Warm up. I'll buy you a coffee." She hesitated, eyes flicking toward the ground as if weighing the risk. Then, slowly, she placed her hand in his. It was cold, delicate, but carried a strength that surprised him. He helped her to her feet and guided her inside the small store. The warmth of the heaters hit her instantly, and she shivered as if her body was remembering what comfort felt like. Ethan bought her a steaming cup of coffee and some food, setting it gently on the table where she sat. For the first time, she really looked at him. His clothes were plain, his boots worn, his hands calloused, but there was a quiet strength in his presence that disarmed her. She murmured a soft, "Thank you," her voice barely audible over the storm outside. Ethan nodded and leaned back, studying her carefully. That was when he noticed the details. The way her nails were neatly manicured despite the mud on her clothes, the faint shimmer of an expensive watch half hidden beneath her sleeve, the way she carried herself, even in despair, straight-backed and composed. She didn't fit here. She wasn't someone who should have been abandoned on a curb outside a gas station. She caught him staring and quickly turned her face away. "Don't ask questions," she whispered, her hands curling protectively over her stomach. "It's better if you don't know." Ethan respected her silence, though curiosity burned inside him. Something about her wasn't adding up. She looked like a woman running, not from poverty, not from chance, but from power. The storm raged outside, lightning flashing through the windows. Ethan sipped his coffee, eyes still scanning her as though trying to solve a puzzle. She looked exhausted, broken, but there was something in her gaze, something unshaken, something that hadn't been crushed by whatever betrayal she'd endured. And he felt it deep down. Whoever she was, she wasn't just another lost soul. Minutes later, the door swung open, letting in a blast of cold rain. A sleek black car rolled slowly into the lot, its headlights slicing through the storm like knives. Ethan glanced outside, his instincts kicking in. The car didn't pull up to a pump. It didn't park for snacks. It just sat there, engine idling, its tinted windows hiding whoever was inside. That was when he saw her expression. The woman's face drained of all color, her hands tightening over her belly. Her breath caught, eyes wide with fear. She turned to Ethan, her voice trembling, urgent. "Please don't let them take me." Ethan stiffened, his jaw tightening as the gravity of her words sank in. He didn't know her name, didn't know her story, but in that moment, he knew one thing. Whatever storm she was running from had just found her again. And by stepping into her life, he had unknowingly stepped into the center of it too. The black car's engine revved, headlights flaring brighter, as if in challenge. The storm outside wasn't the only one coming. Ethan's quiet, worn-down life was about to ignite into chaos, and the woman he had just helped wasn't who she appeared to be. This was only the beginning. The black car didn't move. It just sat in the storm, headlights glaring through the glass like the eyes of a predator watching its prey. Inside the gas station, Olivia, Ethan still didn't know her name, but that was what she'd reveal later, clutched her stomach tighter. Her breath quickened, shallow and uneven, and her eyes never left the shadowed outline of the car. Ethan's instincts, sharpened by years of surviving both the battlefield and single fatherhood, screamed that something was very wrong. People didn't look that terrified of coincidence. This wasn't a stranger's car. This was a hunter. Ethan leaned slightly forward, his voice low and calm, the way you talk to someone teetering on the edge. "Who are they?" he asked. She shook her head violently, tears springing to her eyes. "If I tell you, you'll walk away. Everyone does." Her words were like broken glass, sharp and bitter, cutting into something deeper than fear. Ethan didn't flinch. He looked her dead in the eye and said, "I don't walk away." The hum of the fluorescent lights above seemed to fade under the pounding of her heart. Slowly, with visible effort, she whispered, "They work for him." Her voice cracked at that single word, but the weight behind it was undeniable. "The man who owns me, who owns everything." Ethan's brow furrowed. He didn't understand yet, but he knew enough. Whoever sat in that car wasn't here for small talk. The store clerk glanced nervously at the vehicle outside, muttering under his breath, but didn't interfere. Customers had already trickled out, leaving the place eerily empty except for Ethan, the pregnant woman, and a storm thick with danger pressing against the glass. Then, the passenger door of the black car opened. A tall man in a sleek coat stepped out, unfazed by the rain. He walked with the cold precision of someone used to being obeyed, his shoes splashing silently in puddles. Olivia's entire body recoiled at the sight of him, her hands shaking so hard she nearly spilled the coffee. Ethan caught her wrist gently, steadying her. Their eyes locked for a moment, her desperation meeting his stubborn strength. Without words, she was begging him not to let go. The man pushed into the station, his expensive cologne cutting through the staleness of burnt coffee and cleaning supplies. He looked around with icy disinterest before his gaze landed on Olivia. A smile curled his lips, cold, predatory. "There you are," he said smoothly, ignoring Ethan as if he were invisible. Olivia's lips trembled, but no words came out. Ethan stood, stepping between them. The man's eyes flicked up at him, annoyance flashing briefly before being replaced with calculated arrogance. "And who are you supposed to be?" His voice dripped with contempt. Ethan didn't answer right away. He simply squared his shoulders, a silent wall of defiance. The stranger chuckled, shaking his head. "You don't know who you're protecting. Step aside, and maybe I'll forget you were ever here." Olivia's hand clutched Ethan's sleeve. "Don't," she whispered, her voice barely audible but enough to ignite something inside him. Ethan's jaw clenched. "She's not going anywhere with you," he said evenly, his voice calm but carrying a steel edge that made the clerk's eyes widen. For a heartbeat, silence reigned. Rain lashed harder against the windows. Then the man's smile vanished, replaced by something darker. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a hiss. "You have no idea who you're crossing." Ethan's stare didn't waver. He didn't need to. Years in uniform had taught him that true strength wasn't about who yelled the loudest, but who stood the firmest when the storm came. And Ethan was rooted like stone. The man's composure cracked. He pulled out his phone, typing something quickly, his tone icy. Fine. Stay here with your hero. We'll finish this another way. He turned and walked out, slipping back into the black car. The engine roared to life, tires hissing against the flooded pavement as the car disappeared into the night. Olivia collapsed back in her chair, her hands shaking violently. Ethan crouched beside her, placing a steadying hand on her arm. Talk to me, he said softly. Who is he? Tears streamed down her face, her voice breaking. My husband. The words hung heavy in the air, twisting everything in an instant. She drew in a shaky breath. I married him thinking I was building a future. I didn't know the darkness he carried. He's powerful, Ethan. He's untouchable. And when I found out what he really was, what he did to people, I tried to leave. But you don't leave men like him. You escape, or you die trying. And now he knows where I am. She pressed her hand protectively against her belly. And he'll never let this child be free. The fire inside Ethan's chest burned hotter. He'd fought wars in deserts, seen men destroy villages, watched leaders abuse power until nothing was left but rubble. But seeing her sitting there, trembling, pregnant, and hunted, it lit a rage in him no battlefield ever had. You're safe now, he said firmly, his voice carrying a finality that left no room for doubt. But even as he spoke, he knew it wasn't that simple. Men with cars like that, with power like hers, didn't just walk away. They hunted, they waited, and they struck when you least expected it. That night, Ethan drove her to his small home on the edge of town. The storm followed them the whole way, lightning cracking across the sky like a warning. Olivia sat silently, staring out the window, one hand never leaving her stomach. Ethan's daughter, Emma, was asleep when they arrived, her little night light glowing faintly in the window. Olivia froze when she saw it. You have a child, she whispered, as if the revelation added a new weight to the danger she carried. Ethan nodded. She's my world. Something shifted in Olivia's eyes then. The hardness, the fear, it softened for the first time since he'd met her. Then you can't let me stay. If he finds me here, he'll destroy everything you love. Her voice cracked with guilt, but Ethan shook his head, his expression unyielding. I've faced worse than him. You're not going anywhere. As the storm raged outside, Ethan pulled out blankets, setting up a space for her in the spare room. Olivia sank onto the bed, exhausted beyond measure. But as she closed her eyes, she whispered words he would never forget. You don't understand, Ethan. He's not just powerful. He's a monster, and he doesn't lose. Ethan stood in the doorway, his silhouette framed by the dim hall light. His fists clenched at his sides, his mind already working. He didn't know what storm was about to break into his life, but one thing was certain. If this man came for her, for the baby, or for his daughter, Ethan would fight with every ounce of strength he had left. And for the first time in years, the battle wouldn't just be for survival. It would be for justice. The storm had calmed by dawn, but inside Ethan's house, the tension hadn't eased. Every creak of the wooden floorboards, every shadow outside the window carried the weight of danger. Olivia barely slept. When she did, she jolted awake in sweats, one hand clamped protectively over her stomach. Ethan sat in the living room, half slouched in his worn recliner, eyes fixed on the front door, shotgun leaning against the wall. His military instincts never allowed rest when a threat was this close. By sunrise, the quiet seemed almost too calm, unnatural, like the silence before gunfire on a battlefield. Ethan brewed coffee, the rich smell filling the air. Olivia emerged slowly, wearing one of Emma's oversized sweaters he had given her. Her eyes were rimmed red from tears and exhaustion, but her spine was straighter now, her expression less fragile. You should have let me go last night, she murmured. It's safer for everyone. Ethan turned, his voice firm, almost cutting. Safer for who? Him? You think running makes you safe? I've seen men like him. They only stop when someone makes them stop. Olivia froze, staring at him. Her lips trembled, but there was no denial. She knew he was right. The sound of small feet padding across the floor broke the heavy silence. Emma appeared in her unicorn pajamas, rubbing her eyes. She looked at Olivia with curious innocence. "Daddy, who's she?" Ethan knelt beside his daughter, brushing her hair back gently. "This is a friend. She's staying with us for a little while." Emma blinked, then gave Olivia a sleepy smile before retreating to the kitchen for cereal. That one smile undid Olivia more than Ethan's words. Her eyes watered as she whispered, "You shouldn't risk her. He'll use her if he finds out." Ethan's jaw tightened, but his eyes softened as he leaned closer. And that's exactly why he won't get the chance. Before Olivia could respond, the phone rang. Ethan grabbed it, his instincts telling him not to answer, but he did anyway. Static hissed for a moment before a cold, familiar voice slipped through the line. "You've made a mistake, soldier." Ethan froze. His eyes flicked to Olivia, who paled instantly, her hands trembling. The voice continued, low and deliberate. "You think you can hide her? You think I don't know where she is? Every step she takes, I see. Every breath she takes, I hear. She belongs to me." The line went dead. Ethan's knuckles whitened around the receiver. Olivia's breath hitched, her face drained of all color. "He knows," she whispered. "He's always known." Ethan slammed the phone down, the old wood table shaking under the force. His eyes burned with a fury Olivia hadn't seen before. "Then let him come," he growled. But even as he said it, Ethan's mind raced. This wasn't a man bluffing. This was someone with reach, money, connections. Someone who had Olivia under surveillance long before she ran. Ethan felt the same prickling unease he used to feel in war zones, when the enemy wasn't just men with guns, but unseen eyes watching from every rooftop. By mid-morning, Ethan called in a favor from a former Marine buddy, Jackson, who now worked in private security. Jackson's truck rumbled into the driveway, his presence filling the room with a new kind of steel. He shook Ethan's hand firmly, his gaze scanning Olivia with the sharp assessment of a man trained to measure threats and victims in seconds. "You weren't kidding," Jackson muttered after hearing her story. "If this guy's half as connected as you say, he won't stop until she's either back under his roof or buried." Olivia flinched at the bluntness, but Ethan's stare never wavered. "Then we don't give him that chance." Jackson set up surveillance equipment around the house, cameras facing the street, motion sensors on the back fence. Every beep of technology only reminded Olivia how deep into danger Ethan was dragging himself and his little girl. Around noon, Olivia finally opened up fully. Sitting at the kitchen table, her voice shaking but steady, she told Ethan and Jackson everything. Her husband, Victor Hale, was more than just a businessman. He was a puppeteer, pulling strings in politics, law enforcement, even the media. He made deals in the shadows, built empires on fear, and silenced anyone who tried to expose him. Olivia had discovered the truth after stumbling across encrypted files on his laptop, proof of money laundering, trafficking, and worse. "I couldn't stay married to a man who destroys lives," she whispered, her hands clutching her belly. "I tried to run when I found out I was pregnant. But his men, they dragged me back. For months, I lived like a prisoner in my own home. He swore this child would inherit everything, his empire, his darkness. I couldn't let that happen." Ethan's jaw clenched, his fist pressing against the table. "So you ran?" Olivia nodded, tears falling silently. "And I've been running ever since." Jackson cursed under his breath. "You picked a hell of an enemy, lady." But Ethan's eyes never left hers. In them, Olivia saw something she hadn't felt in years: belief. He didn't look at her as a problem or as baggage. He looked at her like she was someone worth protecting. That afternoon, the first warning came. A black SUV parked a block down the road, engine idling for hours. Ethan and Jackson watched it through binoculars. The driver never got out, never moved, just sat and waited. Ethan's instinct screamed again. This was reconnaissance, intimidation. A message that Victor Hale's reach extended everywhere. When evening fell, the tension thickened. Ethan tucked Emma into bed, reading her favorite story while Olivia sat quietly in the hall, her nerves stretched thin. She listened to Ethan's calm voice, soothing his daughter, and wondered how a man like him had been left to raise a child alone. There was strength in his gentleness, fire in his patience. And it terrified her how much she wanted to trust it. Later that night, when the house was dark and the storm clouds returned, headlights swept across the living room walls. Multiple vehicles, engines rumbling. Jackson peered through the blinds, his voice low. "They're here." Olivia's heart thundered. She gripped Ethan's arm so tightly her nails dug into his skin. His eyes met hers, steady, unshaken. "Stay with Emma," he ordered. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "If he finds me, he'll use her against you. I won't let that happen." Ethan pulled her closer, his voice like steel. "Listen to me. I fought worse odds than this and walked away. You're not running anymore. Not while I'm here." Outside, car doors slammed. Shadows moved in the floodlight glow, dark figures advancing toward the house. Jackson chambered a round in his rifle. Ethan gripped a shotgun, and Olivia clutched her stomach as if shielding the life inside her from the storm closing in. The knock came, 3 sharp raps that echoed like gunfire in the silence. Ethan stood tall, shotgun at his side, his eyes blazing with fury and resolve. He knew this wasn't just about Olivia anymore. This was about Emma, about every innocent life men like Victor Hale thought they could control. And if tonight was the night they brought the war to his door, then so be it. He wasn't backing down. Not now. Not ever. The knock at the door wasn't just a knock. It was a warning, a declaration of war. 3 sharp raps that reverberated through the quiet home, bouncing off the walls like thunder. Ethan's grip tightened on the shotgun, his pulse steady, his breathing controlled. Years of combat had taught him not to fear moments like this, but to embrace them. Olivia stood frozen behind him, her hands wrapped protectively around her belly. Jackson crouched near the window, his rifle trained on the shadows moving outside. "For men," he muttered. "Armed. 1 at the door. 3 circling." Ethan nodded, every muscle in his body tensing like a coiled spring. He glanced at Olivia, his voice low but firm. "Get Emma. Lock the bedroom door. Don't open it unless it's me." Her lips trembled. "Ethan." He met her eyes, fire blazing in his. "Go. Now." Tears spilled down her cheeks, but she obeyed, slipping down the hall toward Emma's room. Ethan watched her disappear, then turned back toward the door. The knock came again, louder this time. "We know she's in there," a voice growled from outside. "Open the door, soldier boy, and maybe we'll leave you breathing." Ethan's jaw tightened. He stepped forward, swinging the door open with sudden force. Rain slashed across the porch, lightning illuminating the figures in black coats. The man at the front, tall, broad, with a scar running down his cheek, smirked. "Where's the girl?" Ethan didn't answer. He raised a shotgun and fired. The blast shattered the night, the front man dropping instantly, his body crashing into the mud. Chaos erupted. The 3 others lunged from the sides, guns flashing in the storm. Jackson returned fire through the window, his rifle spitting fire. Glass shattered, bullets punched into the walls, wood splintered. The quiet suburban home became a war zone. Ethan moved like a machine, his body a weapon honed by years of discipline. He ducked behind the doorframe as rounds tore through the living room. He waited for the pause, the telltale moment when a clip ran dry, then surged forward. His fist cracked into one man's jaw, the shotgun but slamming into his ribs. The man dropped, howling. Ethan ripped the pistol from his grip and fired at the third, sending him sprawling into the flower bed outside. Lightning flashed again, revealing the last man retreating toward the SUVs parked at the curb. He shouted into a phone, desperate, frantic. Ethan's stomach sank. This wasn't over. This was only the first wave. Inside, Olivia crouched in the bedroom with Emma clutched to her chest. The little girl whimpered, asking what was happening, but Olivia hushed her, rocking gently even as her own heart raced. She heard the gunfire, the shouting, the crash of bodies against furniture. And through it all, she whispered prayers she hadn't dared utter in years. Then silence. A silence so heavy it pressed against her lungs. She waited, trembling, until the door creaked open. Ethan stepped inside, mud on his boots, blood on his knuckles, his eyes still burning with fury. "It's over," he said, his voice hoarse. "For now." Olivia exhaled a sob of relief, clutching Emma tighter. Ethan crouched beside them, brushing a hand over Emma's hair. For a fleeting moment, there was peace. But the war wasn't done. 2 days later, news reports filled the airwaves. 3 unidentified men found dead near Ethan's neighborhood. The police called it a gang dispute, but Olivia knew better. She knew who had sent them, and she knew he would send more. Victor Hade, her husband. The name alone made her skin crawl. He wasn't just a man. He was a monster who wore a perfect smile, a devil wrapped in silk suits and charm. She remembered the way he whispered promises when they first met, the way he swept her into a life of luxury, only to cage her with cruelty once she was too deep to climb out. And now he was coming. The night of a storm had been a message, a warning. But Victor didn't warn twice. Ethan knew it too. He doubled security around the house, worked with Jackson to set up escape routes, and stocked supplies in case they had to move fast. But deep down, he understood that running would never end this. There was only one way forward: confrontation. Olivia finally told him everything. The file she had copied, hidden away on a USB drive. Proof of Victor's empire, names, numbers, accounts. Enough to bring him down if placed in the right hands. "This is why he wants me," she whispered. "Not just because I left, but because I took this. It's his empire in my pocket." Ethan stared at the drive, its plastic shell holding the kind of power men killed for. He closed his fist around it, his jaw set. "Then we use it." Olivia's eyes widened. "You don't understand. He owns the police, the courts, everyone. If you try to expose him, he'll crush you." Ethan leaned closer, his voice steady, unyielding. "Then we make sure he can't." The plan came together quickly. Jackson would get the drive into the hands of a federal contact, someone outside Victor's reach. Ethan would draw Victor out, make him show his face. Olivia would stay hidden with Emma until it was done. But Victor wasn't waiting. The night they set the plan in motion, headlights flared once again outside Ethan's house. This time, it wasn't just 3 men. It was a fleet. SUVs lined the street, their engines growling like beasts ready to devour. Ethan stepped out onto the porch, shotgun in hand, rain pouring around him like a curtain of steel. Victor Hale himself emerged from the lead vehicle, his expensive suit unbothered by the weather, his smirk as cold as the night air. "You've been busy, soldier," Victor drawled. "Killing my men, hiding my wife, playing hero. Do you know what happens to heroes in the real world? They die. Alone." Ethan didn't flinch. He stood tall, every inch of him radiating defiance. "You're not taking her back. Not her, not the baby. Not ever." Victor's smirk widened. "That child is mine. My blood. My heir. You think you can stand between me and what's mine?" Ethan raised the shotgun, his voice a low growl. "Try me." For a moment, the storm itself seemed to hold its breath. Then chaos erupted. Men surged forward, guns raised. Jackson opened fire from the window. Ethan blasted the first 2 off the porch. Victor shouted orders, his face twisting with rage as his empire clashed against the walls of one man's home. Inside, Olivia held Emma close, tears streaking her cheeks. She could hear the gunfire, the shouting, the storm. But she also heard Ethan's voice in her mind, steady and sure. "You're not running anymore. Not while I'm here." And she believed him. For the first time, she believed that maybe, just maybe, the monster could be defeated. And that's the lesson tonight. Sometimes the greatest battles aren't fought in war zones or boardrooms. They're fought in quiet homes, in the lives of ordinary people who dare to stand against giants. But tell me this, if you were in Ethan's shoes, would you have risked everything to protect Olivia and her unborn child? Or would you have walked away, pretending it wasn't your fight? I want to hear your thoughts. Drop them in the comments right now. Don't leave just yet. Smash that subscribe button, turn on the bell, and comment where you're watching from. Because the story I'm dropping tomorrow will shake you even harder than this one. You don't want to miss it.